Good morning. So if you're like me and you're creating courses for an audience, either for a group education program within a corporation or an organization, or if you're creating education for an audience because you're an entrepreneur, then you might be pretty focused on creating the content itself. So focused on mapping out the content and thinking about what education do I need to provide? What are the learning objectives and the planned learning outcomes? What do people need to do and practice in order to achieve those learning outcomes? And what elements of audience engagement can I use to keep people interested and excited about the content? So last week we actually did a live, on Tuesday last week, instead of doing a live video, we actually did a live webinar to help people who are being asked to rapidly convert their live classroom training, so their in-person classroom training, to online learning. It's called How to Rapidly Transition Your Classroom Education to Online Learning. And we've provided a link in the description to that webinar. You can still see it. We already finished it live, but we recorded the whole thing so you can catch the replay if you are in that situation and you want to learn from that. And in one of the things that we talked about in that live webinar is to make sure that you're giving your students what they need and what they want by looking at 4 areas: education, activities, connection, and communication. Now, of course, your learners are looking for education, right? That's why they're enrolled in your program. Whether you are a college professor or you are a workplace trainer, people are taking your program most likely because they are trying to get some kind of an education. I mean, even if you are a school teacher and teaching young children, well, they might not be concerned about the education, but certainly the parents want them there because they want them to be educated. So that one is obvious. That is your content, that is the education. And the next bucket is activities. Now, we know that people learn best when they actually do things and they put the information and the skills into practice. So those are our activities, and activities are also a cornerstone for audience engagement. So the more activities you have, the better, so that people can put the information into practice and try things. But something that you may not realize is that your learners are also looking for a sense of connection. So connection with other people, and also connections with how this information and this knowledge that they're learning applies in their world. So this is actually a very critical element of any learning program, any training program that you do, is providing your learners with a sense of connection. Whether you're doing classroom training, that sense of connection is pretty easy to achieve. In a virtual environment, though, that's a whole other question. So if you're providing live virtual instruction, as many of us are right now, how do you give your learners that sense of connection? So here, there are basically 2 components to connection. We have community and we have collaboration. And so how do we create this sense of connection during our live classes? Well, number 1 is that you can encourage people to turn on their cameras. And this can be a hard one, right? If you're using, for example, Zoom video to deliver your courses, you as the instructor should be on camera all the time, right? You want people to be able to see your expression, your enthusiasm, your face, everything like that. But getting other people to turn on their cameras, that's really hard. But it is so important and so helpful, because when you can see everyone in your class, you can pull from their enthusiasm, right? Like if you're just sitting there and you're talking blankly to your computer screen, your level of enthusiasm is going to go down. So when you can see the look on your learner faces, especially when you're cracking your hilarious jokes and you're telling your stories, right? Because stories are vital to providing people learning experiences. when you can see people smiling and engaging, that makes it really helpful. And it also helps the other students in your program. So it can, I get it, it can be hard to get people to turn their cameras on when they're in a Zoom meeting, especially because this is new for everyone. You're all of a sudden, you're learning from home, you're working from home. You know, you might be sitting in your underwear drinking a beer, I don't know. But when you turn on the camera, then we do know that that's happening. So, you know, create that learning expectation for your class and say, hey, we're going to turn on the cameras so that we can all see each other. So try to encourage that. That is one way that you can create a sense of connection with the learners in your class. Another way is create opportunities for group discussions. So in your live in-person classes, you probably have a lot of breakout groups and group discussions. Those are things that you still want to encourage in class. And in a live virtual class, you know, you might so people aren't talking over each other. One way that you could do it is say, okay, ask them a question, get them to comment in the chat, and then you can ask certain people to unmute and expand upon what they had entered in the chat. But however you do it, make sure that you are creating group discussions. And I'd love to hear your ideas. Put it in the chat. What do you do to create group discussions in your live virtual classes? So get people to unmute and talk one at a time so they're not talking over each other. You encourage them to use the chat functionality to participate. And another great thing that you have with most video conferencing technology is virtual whiteboards and breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are, so virtual whiteboards, it literally looks like a whiteboard and people can type on it and draw images and things like that. So those are great for mind mapping and brainstorming and troubleshooting, problem solving. Breakout rooms are when you split your audience into multiple sessions. So from within, so for example, let's say we're using Zoom video. From within Zoom video, you can create breakout groups and you can assign certain students to certain rooms. So if in your in-person class environment, you were doing breakout groups in the classroom. So, you know, maybe you said to your students, okay, you're going to work on this case study. You're going to break into your groups. You can actually still do that in your live virtual classes using the functionality that's called breakout rooms. And almost all virtual tools for instruction have the functionality of breakout rooms. So definitely take advantage of those and use them to create that sense of connection with collaboration and with people communicating directly with each other within those groups. And the breakout room functionality has all the same functionality as the main the main person who's presenting, right? So they can, within their breakout groups, they can share screen, they can use the chat, they have full video and audio capabilities within the breakout rooms. So those are the ideas around creating a sense of connection while you're doing your live virtual classes. Now, you can also create a sense of connection outside of class by having channels for student discussion or even for discussion with your colleagues. So I would suggest having both opportunities. If your organization is rapidly transitioning from providing in-person classroom education to providing online virtual education, you're gonna, believe me, there's gonna be lots of challenges. There are always technical challenges. And just, you know, how do I do it in this different way? So having a discussion forum for your colleagues is really, really helpful because all those problems that you've been experiencing, it's very likely that some of your colleagues have also had that experience and that they've possibly found out a solution for it, right? Like the power is in the group. So having a way for your colleagues to have group discussion and for your students to be able to have kind of that peer mentorship with each other and collaboration. So this could be done, you know, depending on your organization. You might have a learning management system in place that already allows for group discussions. If you don't, then a really simple way to enable group discussion is to have a private Facebook group for your audience or for your colleagues, whatever channel works for you. So if you're not sure what to do, then ask your audience, ask your students what works best for them. Slack is also very popular, so you could have a Slack channel for your group discussions. So those are ways that we're suggesting on how to create a sense of connection with your students. And this is a critical part of any learning program. People crave connection. So I'd love to hear your ideas. How are you creating connection in your live virtual classes? How did you used to do it in your in-person classes? And how has that changed to now that you're delivering training in an online environment? And this is just one slice of the ideas that we talked about in our live webinar last week, to help people convert their in-person classroom education to online learning. But we talked about so many other topics that are important when you're doing that rapid transition to online learning. So if you are an educator who is transitioning from delivering in-person classroom education, then I'd like to invite you to have a look at the webinar replay. We had over 250 registrations for the webinar, so we had a lot of people who engaged and really got a lot out of it. So if you are an educator yourself, or you know someone who is an educator who's being asked to transition to live virtual instruction or asynchronous virtual instruction, then please share that webinar link with them so that they can get the information and the education. Thank you so much for joining me today. Wishing you inspiration, innovation, and continuous learning. Have a great day, and we'll see you next Tuesday at hopefully 11 a.m. PST. I was a little late today. Have a wonderful day.